The U-Haul truck groaned to a stop, its brakes squealing a protest against the steep incline of the driveway. Sarah sighed, a long, weary exhalation that was part relief, part dread. She stood in the middle of her new front yard, hands on her hips, surveying the pristine landscape of her dream home. A fresh coat of white paint shimmered in the afternoon sun. The manicured lawn was a sea of perfect green, and the flower beds were a riot of color, neatly arranged and mulched. This was it. The culmination of a decade of hard work, a testament to her belief that order and beauty were not just ideals but attainable realities. Then she saw them. Across the street, in the driveway of the house that had been empty for months, were 3 cars that looked like they had been abandoned by time itself. A rusted-out, moss-covered pickup truck with a gaping hole in its front fender sat near the garage door. Beside it was a faded blue muscle car, one wheel missing, its body covered in what looked like a decade of dust and bird droppings. Further back, under the shadow of a sprawling oak tree, was a vintage sedan with its hood propped open, a tangle of wires and disconnected parts spilling out like mechanical entrails. They weren't just old cars. They were an eyesore, a blight on the perfect suburban canvas she had just painted. The man who owned them emerged from the house next door. He was a tall figure, with broad shoulders and a scruffy beard that seemed to defy all attempts at grooming. He wore a faded t-shirt that had seen better days and jeans stained with grease and oil. He didn't look like a suburbanite. He looked like a mechanic who had just clocked out after a long, dirty shift. He gave her a friendly nod and a crooked smile, but she was too focused on the vehicular graveyard in his yard to return the gesture. Over the next 2 weeks, the situation only got worse. The U-Haul was unloaded, the boxers unpacked, and Sarah settled into the rhythm of her new life. But the cars remained. She would wake up to the sight of them, their forms silhouetted against the morning light. She would look out her kitchen window while making coffee, only to see the man she learned his name was Leo tinkering under the hood of the sedan, his legs sticking out from under the car. The sound of a wrench clanking on metal became the soundtrack to her afternoons. Her first attempt at communication was passive-aggressive, a classic move in the unwritten rules of neighborly conflict. She wrote a polite but firm note on a piece of lavender stationery. "Dear neighbor," it began, "welcome to the neighborhood. We are so excited to have you here. I wanted to reach out and kindly ask about the vehicles in your driveway. They are quite a collection, and it would be wonderful if you could move them into the garage." It was a lie, of course. She didn't think they were quite a collection. She thought they were a biohazard. She slipped the note into his mailbox and retreated, feeling both guilty and justified. A day later, she saw the note lying on his dashboard, crumpled into a ball. Her stomach sank. It had been ignored. The next note was less polite. "I'm writing again to express my concern about the appearance of our street. The cars in your driveway are detracting from the neighborhood's beauty. Perhaps you could find a more suitable place for them." This time, she signed her name, hoping the personal touch would have an effect. It didn't. The note disappeared, but the cars remained. The final straw came a month after she moved in. She was hosting a small gathering for her friends, a housewarming party to celebrate her victory over urban living. Her friends, a meticulously curated group of professionals who shared her appreciation for aesthetics, arrived one by one. And one by one, they saw the cars. "Oh my God. What is that?" her friend Jessica whispered, pointing a perfectly manicured finger at the rusted-out pickup. "Does he know that's not a lawn ornament? He's a slob, that's what he is," another friend, Michael, said with a scoff. "Some people just don't have a sense of pride in their property." Sarah felt a hot flush of shame creep up her neck. She had worked so hard to create a perfect image, and this one man, her new neighbor, was single-handedly destroying it. She had to do something, and she had to do it now. The next morning, armed with a resolution born of pure frustration, she walked across the street. Leo was, as usual, under the hood of the blue muscle car, his back to her. A wrench clanked against the engine block. "Excuse me," she said, her voice a little too loud, a little too strained. He jumped, his head hitting the underside of the hood with a dull thud. He pulled his head out, wincing, and saw her standing there, a vision of suburban exasperation. "Hey," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "You're Sarah, right? The notes were from you." "Yes," she said, her voice firm. "I need to talk to you about your cars." He straightened up, his eyes kind but tired. "Right, the cars. I'm sorry about the head-bumping thing. Look, I don't want to be a difficult neighbor, but this is a quiet, family-friendly street. People take pride in their homes here. Your cars, they're a bit much. They're a bit much." He repeated, a wry smile playing on his lips. "I guess I could see that. They are, for lack of a better word, junk. Rusted, broken-down vehicles. The neighborhood looks like a junkyard." His smile faded. "They're not junk, Sarah. They're projects." "Projects?" She scoffed. "Do you plan on working on them? Because it's been a month, and the only thing that's changed is that there's more oil on your driveway." "I work on them when I have time," he said, his voice now flat. "I'm sorry you don't approve of my hobbies." "It's not about your hobbies, it's about the property value of the entire block. I've invested a lot of money in this house, and I don't want it to depreciate because you want to play with old cars." He stared at her for a long, quiet moment, his expression unreadable. "You're right," he said finally, his voice low. "You're absolutely right. It's not fair to the rest of the neighborhood. I'll take care of it." He didn't say another word. He just turned, grabbed a rag, and began wiping his hands. She stood there, a small thrill of victory running through her. She had won. She had stood up for her right to a beautiful neighborhood, and the problem would be solved. For the next 2 days, nothing happened. The cars remained, a silent rebuke. On the third day, a tow truck arrived. Sarah watched from her window as the truck's winch rumbled to life, the cable stretching taut as it hooked onto the rusted-out pickup. Leo stood there, directing the driver, his face impassive. The truck was loaded, and the tow truck rumbled away, a piece of her neighborly nightmare finally gone. The next day, the same thing. The blue muscle car was loaded onto a flatbed truck and taken away. Sarah felt a genuine sense of relief. She was a good person, she told herself. She just wanted things to be a certain way, and there was nothing wrong with that. She wanted to walk across the street and thank him, but she couldn't shake the memory of his quiet, hurt face. A week passed. The vintage sedan was still there. Hood still up, but Leo was gone. She hadn't seen him since the last tow truck left. She started to feel a pang of guilt. Maybe she had been too harsh. He seemed like a decent guy, if not a particularly tidy one. she decided to make him a peace offering. She baked a batch of her famous lemon blueberry muffins, the ones that were guaranteed to win over even the most stubborn of hearts. She put them on a plate and walked across the street, her heart thumping in her chest. She knocked on his door. No answer. She tried again. Silence. The front door was slightly ajar. Hesitantly, she pushed it open. "Leo," she called out, her voice echoing in the empty house. "It's Sarah. I brought you some muffins." The house was empty. The furniture was gone. The walls were bare. A single box sat in the middle of the living room floor, with the word "tools" scrawled on it in black marker. A note was taped to the box. "Sarah," it read. "I moved out. Thanks for the wake-up call. Hope you enjoy the neighborhood now." Leo, her stomach dropped. He had moved because of her. She stood in the empty house, the muffins suddenly feeling like a massive burden in her hands. She had one, but at what cost? She hadn't just gotten rid of the cars. She had gotten rid of the neighbor. She walked back to her house, her head spinning. She felt like a monster, a suburban tyrant who had exiled a man just because she didn't like his cars. The empty space across the street, once a source of irritation, was now a gaping hole, a constant reminder of her intolerance. The next day, she decided to do some research. She had never asked what Leo did for a living, assuming he was just a hobbyist with too many vehicles. She opened her laptop and typed "Leo and cars" into a search engine. The results were not what she expected. The first result was a LinkedIn profile. "Leo Carter," it said. "Owner, CEO, Carter Automotive Group." She clicked on it, her heart thudding in her chest. The profile picture was the man from across the street, beard and all, but in a suit and tie, looking surprisingly professional. The next result was a Forbes article titled, "The New King of the Dealerships: How Leo Carter Built a Car Empire from Scrap." The article talked about his humble beginnings, how he had started as a mechanic, and how he had a lifelong passion for classic cars. It mentioned his personal collection of vintage vehicles that he painstakingly restored himself. "He's a man of simple tastes." The article quoted a colleague. "He'd rather spend a Saturday with his hands in the engine of a '68 Mustang than at a stuffy gala. He always says the real beauty of a car is in its bones, not its shiny paint job." Sarah felt a wave of nausea. The rusted-out pickup, the faded muscle car, the vintage sedan... They weren't junk. They were his passion projects. They were his legacy. And she had called them junk. She kept scrolling, finding article after article about his success, his philanthropic work, his reputation as a fair and honest businessman. The Carter Automotive Group was the largest car dealership network in the state, with dealerships in every major city. They sold everything from sleek luxury sedans to rugged trucks. The man she had exiled from her neighborhood was a titan of the industry she had dismissed as a hobby. She felt a hot flush of shame, a deep, bone-crushing humiliation. She had judged a book by its cover, a man by his dirty clothes and the cars in his driveway. She had assumed he was a slob, an eyesore, a blight on her perfect world, and he had been nothing of the sort. He was a successful, self-made man who simply had a passion that didn't fit into her narrow definition of beautiful. Her friends called later that week, asking if the junk cars were gone. "It's so much better now," Jessica said. The street looks so much cleaner. Sarah couldn't bring herself to respond. She just nodded, her throat tight with a mixture of guilt and shame. One afternoon, a few weeks after Leo had moved, a gleaming cherry-red convertible pulled into the empty driveway across the street. A man in a sharp suit got out, walked to the front door, and put a key in the lock. It was Leo. Sarah's heart jumped. He hadn't moved out for good. He had just moved the cars to a more suitable location, perhaps to one of his many garages, and had probably been staying at another residence. She rushed out her door and started walking across the street. "Leo," she called out, her voice a mix of apology and desperation. He turned, a look of surprise on his face. "Sarah, I didn't think you'd still be here." I'm so sorry, Leo. I found out about you, about your dealerships. I feel like such an idiot. I thought you were just a slob with a bunch of junk cars. I had no idea. I was so wrong." He looked at her for a long moment, a slow smile spreading across his face. "It's all right, Sarah, I got it. I could have told you, but I figured it was a good lesson for both of us." "A lesson," she said, confused. "Yeah, for you, not to judge a book by its cover. And for me? Well, I learned that not everyone appreciates the beauty of a project car. Some people just want a clean driveway." She laughed, a weak, embarrassed sound. "I guess I am one of those people. But I want to change. I want to know more about them. The cars, the projects." He looked at her, his eyes twinkling. "You're serious?" "I am. I owe you an apology, and I'd like to make it up to you. I'm here now. Tell me what you're working on, please. I'd love to learn." He nodded, a genuine smile now on his face. "Okay, Sarah, come on over. I've got something in the garage I want to show you." She walked across the street, her heart feeling lighter than it had in weeks. The cherry-red convertible sat in the driveway, a symbol of her ignorance and his success. She had misjudged him completely, but he had given her a chance to fix things. She didn't just want to fix the problem. She wanted to fix herself. The garage door rumbled open, revealing a meticulously organized space filled with tools and car parts. In the center sat a pristine vintage car, gleaming under the bright lights. It was the rusted-out pickup from his driveway, completely restored, looking more like a museum piece than a junk car. She gasped, and he smiled. "This is the one that started it all," he said, patting its hood. "A '68 Ford F-100, my first truck. I've been restoring it for 2 years. It's almost done." He showed her the engine, a work of art he had rebuilt himself. He told her stories about the car, about growing up working on engines, and about his dream of owning his own shop. He talked about his passion for the work, the satisfaction of bringing a broken-down vehicle back to life. "I don't just sell cars," he said, looking at her with an earnest expression. "I love them. Every single one of them has a story, and I love being a part of those stories." She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I'm so sorry, Leo. I really was such a terrible person to you." "You weren't terrible, Sarah. You just had a bad day, or a bad week, or a bad month. We all do. We just have different ways of dealing with things. I really appreciate you giving me a second chance. I'd like to be friends, if you'd let me." "I'd like that very much, Sarah." And they spent the next few months getting to know each other, sharing stories and laughter. She learned about his family, his friends, his passions. He learned about her work, her hopes, her fears. She found herself drawn to his laid-back, humble nature. He was everything she wasn't: spontaneous, messy, and unapologetically himself. He taught her how to change the oil in her car, how to use a wrench, and how to appreciate the quiet beauty of a well-oiled engine. One day, he gave her a ride in the restored F100. It ran like a dream, its engine purring as they drove down the street. She waved to her friends, who looked on in surprise and confusion. She didn't care. She was proud of her new friend and his junk car. She had learned a lesson she would never forget: that the value of a person and a car is not determined by its appearance, but by the love and passion that goes into it. Her perfect neighborhood was now a little less perfect, but her life was a whole lot richer. She had found a true friend in the unlikeliest of places. Her new neighbor had come to teach her a lesson, and she had passed with flying colors.